When my parents told me they'd be gone for the weekend, I didn't think much of it. I was 21 in my senior year of college, home for the summer before starting grad school. I'd stayed alone before. Our house sat at the edge of town, tucked behind a row of tall pines that swayed like old men in the wind. It was safe, familiar, until that weekend when the storm came. Friday night started quietly. I made popcorn, turned on a movie, and listened to the rain tattooing the windows. The power flickered twice before steadying. I laughed it off, thinking of how my mom would panic if she were here. She hated storms. I texted her a picture of the lightning streaking the backyard and wrote, "Still alive. Don't worry." By midnight, I'd gone upstairs to bed. The storm had grown worse, and the house creaked under the pressure of the wind. I left my bedside lamp on, some small comfort against the flickering darkness. Then I heard it, a soft, dragging whisper. At first, I thought it was the wind squeezing through the vent near my bed. I turned over, pulling my blanket higher, but then I heard my name. Olivia. It wasn't loud, it wasn't even clear, but it was real. I froze, staring at the vent. My first instinct was to rationalize it. The storm, the old house, maybe a weird echo. But then it came again, clearer, unmistakable. "I can see you." Every muscle in my body turned rigid. I didn't breathe. The lamp buzzed quietly. The rain slashed harder against the window, and still I sat there staring at that vent, waiting for something else. When I finally found the strength to move, I grabbed my phone. I dialed 911, but the call didn't go through. My screen flashed. No service. I swore under my breath, grabbed my car keys, and hurried toward the stairs. Then I saw it, the attic hatch at the end of the hallway. It was slightly open, swaying with the wind that shouldn't have reached inside. And before I could react, a hand, a real human hand, reached down and gently pushed it closed. I backed up until I hit the wall. My knees almost gave out. I wanted to scream, but fear clamped my throat. I couldn't make a sound. My eyes were glued to that hatch, expecting it to move again. I needed to get out. The front door was 15 feet away, maybe less. I started moving toward it slowly, keeping my eyes on the ceiling. My heartbeat filled the house like a drum. The lights flickered once, twice, and then went out completely. I ran. Outside, the storm hit me full force, rain lashing sideways, wind whipping through my hair. I sprinted toward my car, fumbling with the keys, hands shaking too hard to get the door open. When I finally did, I dove inside and locked it. I tried to start the engine. Nothing. The battery was dead. I slammed my fists against the steering wheel, breathing so hard it hurt. I couldn't stay out here. What if whoever was in the attic came down? What if they saw me? And then, through the sheets of rain, I saw headlights. A police cruiser turned the corner, its red and blue lights flashing faintly through the storm. Relief hit me so hard I almost sobbed. I waved both arms until they stopped. 2 officers got out, a man and a woman. Officer Miller, according to his badge, and Officer Lopez. They asked me what happened, and I told them everything. Every detail, from the whisper in the vent to the hand pushing the attic closed. Miller exchanged a quick look with Lopez. "You said your parents are out of town?" "Yes, until Monday." He nodded. "Stay here, ma'am. We'll check the house." I watched them walk up the porch steps, flashlights cutting through the dark. The front door creaked open. The light beams swept across the hallway, up the stairs, and finally to the attic hatch. They were inside for 20 minutes. When they came back, Officer Miller looked calm. But there was something under it. A tightness around the mouth, the kind of look people have when they don't want to scare you. "Whoever was in there is gone," he said. "But we found footprints, muddy ones, inside the air ducts leading to your bedroom vent." My stomach dropped. "Air ducts?" He nodded. "Small ones. Someone thin could have moved through them. We'll keep a patrol nearby tonight just in case." I didn't sleep. Not that night. Not for many nights after. The next morning, the storm had passed, leaving everything washed and pale. The police had come back with a forensics team, checking for prints, hair, anything. They found traces of dirt and an old blanket hidden inside the attic insulation. Whoever had been there had been living in our house. My parents rushed home that afternoon. My mom couldn't stop crying. My dad couldn't stop pacing. How long? He kept asking the officers. How long was someone in our home without us knowing? No one had an answer. They replaced the locks that day, called an HVAC company to seal the ducts, even installed a security system with motion sensors. Still, I couldn't shake the image of that hand closing the hatch. Not grabbing or attacking, closing it. Like whoever it was, didn't want me to see them. A week later, curiosity got the better of me. I went back into the attic despite my mom begging me not to. I told myself I needed to see it in daylight, to convince myself it wasn't as terrifying as it seemed that night. It was worse. The space was low and narrow, filled with dust motes and the smell of insulation. There were candy wrappers, a half-empty water bottle, and a small, filthy pillow stuffed behind one of the beams. Near the air vent that led to my room, I found something else, scratches on the wood. Dozens of them. Short, shallow, desperate scratches, like fingernails clawing for air. I got out of there fast. A few days later, Officer Lopez called. "We might have a lead," she said. "We caught a man breaking into a storage shed 2 towns over. He matches the description from a few similar cases. People finding squatters in their attics or basements." His name was Evan Price. 33 years old. Homeless. No record of violence, but plenty of trespassing charges. He'd been living in abandoned buildings for years, slipping in and out without anyone noticing. Lopez told me something I can't forget. He said he never meant to hurt anyone. He just needed a place to stay during the storm. I asked about the whisper through the vent. She hesitated. He said he didn't mean to scare you. He said he just wanted to know if you were awake. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about that. He hadn't wanted to harm me, but he'd still been there, watching, listening, existing in the same walls I'd walked past every day. The idea that safety could vanish so quietly unsettled something deep in me. Months passed. The house was repaired, repainted, resecured. My parents tried to pretend it was over, that the locks and alarms made us safe again. But every creak, every flicker of shadow, still made me freeze. I'd wake some nights thinking I heard that whisper again, though I knew it was just my mind replaying the moment. Trauma has a way of looping itself, over and over, until you learn to quiet it. I went back to school that fall, but I wasn't the same. I double-checked every door, every window, every vent. I didn't tell people the story at first. How could I? It sounded like urban legend, but it was real. Sometimes, when I visit home now, I stand under that same attic hatch and look up. It doesn't creak anymore. The air vent in my room has been sealed shut. But part of me still imagines what it was like for him. Alone, desperate, hiding just feet away from another human being, whispering through the dark. Maybe that's the part that scares me most, because fear doesn't always come from evil. Sometimes it comes from need. The story of that night taught me something simple but hard to forget. Safety isn't just about locks and alarms. It's about awareness. We live our lives assuming the walls around us protect us, but danger often hides in the places we never look. It also taught me compassion. The man in my attic wasn't a monster. He was a broken person doing something wrong out of desperation. Still, fear doesn't care about reasons. It only knows survival. It had been raining since before sunset, the kind of rain that eats at the earth and turns every dirt road into a river of mud. The sky had gone dark early that evening, heavy clouds pressing down so low, it felt like the whole world had shrunk to the few acres around the clinic. I was the only nurse on duty at Pine Hollow Medical that night. Our small rural clinic sat 30 miles outside of town, serving the farms and logging crews scattered through the hills. Normally, Dr. Evans or one of the PAs stayed through the night with me, but both had been called out earlier for a highway pileup. The sheriff radioed that the storm had knocked out half the power lines. They'd be stuck out there for hours. So it was just me. I tried not to mind it. I'd worked plenty of late shifts alone. I'd grown up in this county, learned early that silence was part of the job. The only sounds were the wind pushing against the siding and the hum of the backup generator trying to keep the light steady. Every now and then, thunder rolled across the valley like something dragging chains through the clouds. Around 10:30, I was restocking the supply shelves when the front door creaked open. At first, I figured the wind had blown it loose. The latch was old, and the air pressure in storms could make it pop open. But then I saw them. Muddy footprints, one after another, dark and wet against the linoleum leading from the entrance toward the exam rooms. I froze, pulse hammering in my throat. I hadn't heard any car pull up. The roads were a mess. Who would even be out here? "Hello?" I called out. "This is Nurse Lena. If you need help, please say something." No answer. Only the steady drip of water hitting the floor. I grabbed the flashlight from the desk and clicked it on. The beam cut through the flickering light, tracing those footprints. They led down the main hallway, past the storage closet, past the break room. I followed slowly, my shoes squeaking on the wet floor. "Hello? You hurt?" Nothing. Then lightning flashed outside, so bright it painted the hallway white for half a second. In that instant, I saw someone standing in the mirror at the end of the corridor, tall, soaked, staring straight at me. And when the light faded, there was no one there. My breath caught in my chest. I swept the flashlight beam across the hall. Empty. No movement. No sound. Just the hum of the generator and the storm raging outside. The mirror, though, it had fogged slightly, as if someone had stood close enough to breathe on it. My own reflection stared back at me, pale and trembling. I told myself it was exhaustion. I'd been working 14-hour shifts all week, barely sleeping. It was the storm, the dark, the flickering lights. But when I turned around, I saw another wet footprint, newer, glossier than the rest, right behind me. "Okay," I whispered, voice shaking. "If someone's here, you need to answer me." I moved toward the nearest exam room. The door was open just a crack. I pushed it wider and shined the flashlight inside. The gurney sat empty, the sheets rumpled like someone had brushed past them. A chair lay tipped over in the corner. That's when I heard it. Soft breathing. Not mine. It came from the vent near the floor. I knelt, trying to listen. The sound stopped instantly, as if it knew I was listening. I stood up fast, heart hammering. I needed to call the sheriff. I ran back toward the front desk, but the phone lines were dead. Static hissed when I picked up the receiver. My cell had no signal either. The wind howled again, and the lights dimmed so low I could barely see. Then the generator sputtered once, twice, and died. Darkness swallowed the clinic. I stood there in the pitch black, gripping my flashlight so tight my knuckles ached. The beam quivered as I tried to keep it steady. Somewhere down the hallway, something metallic clattered to the floor. I called out again. "If you need help, I'm a nurse, just talk to me." Still nothing, only rain hammering the roof and that low moan of wind through the vents. I thought about leaving, grabbing my coat and making a run for the truck, but the road outside was flooded and I'd have to cross the bridge to get out. If it had washed out, I'd be trapped in my car with no way to call for help. The safest option was to stay put until morning. At least, that's what I told myself. I started checking rooms again, one by one, moving cautiously, keeping the flashlight low to the ground so I wouldn't blind myself. In each room, the same thing. Nothing. Just empty exam tables, medical charts, the smell of antiseptic and wet air. Then, in the third room, I found something. A jacket, heavy canvas covered in mud. Someone had hung it on the IV stand. In the pocket was a soggy note, the ink smeared but still legible enough to read 3 words. "Help me, please." I felt my stomach drop. Lightning flashed outside, throwing the room into harsh white light, and for that instant, I saw the mirror across from the bed again. The same figure stood there staring at me, eyes hollow, water dripping from his hair. I spun around. The room was empty. The storm raged until near dawn. I spent most of the night in the supply room, sitting against the door with the flashlight on my lap, waiting for something, anything, to happen. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. When the rain finally slowed, I ventured out. The clinic looked wrecked, mud tracks across the hall, papers scattered everywhere from the wind pushing through the cracked windows. Then I saw the footprints again. They led not to the front door but to the back, toward the old emergency entrance no one used anymore. The lock on that door was broken clean through. I stepped outside carefully, the air heavy with mist. The ground was churned to mud, and just beyond the back steps, I saw the outline of a truck half submerged in the ditch, its headlights dead, the front end crushed against a tree. There was no body inside, just a blood-stained seat and shattered glass. When the sheriff finally made it up the road later that morning, he looked grim. "We found tracks about a mile back," he said. "Somebody wrecked during the storm. Probably came here looking for help." He paused, studying my face. "But they didn't make it, Lena. The flood took the bridge out. No one could have reached you from that direction. Not alive, anyway." For days after, I kept thinking about that night. The footprints, the jacket, the figure in the mirror. The sheriff's words didn't leave me alone. No one could have reached you. I wanted to believe it was just my mind playing tricks on me. Maybe I'd seen my own reflection warped by lightning and fear. Maybe someone really had tried to reach the clinic but never made it to the door. But there's something about that mirror I can't shake. The fog that had gathered on the glass, the way it had looked like a breath. I still work at Pine Hollow, though I don't take night shifts anymore. The mirror in the hallway was replaced after that storm, cracked from one corner to the other. Every once in a while, when thunder rolls and the lights flicker, I swear I see a shape in it again. Just for a second. Maybe it's just a trick of the storm. Or maybe some souls don't stop looking for help, even after the roads are gone. Fear often hides in what we don't understand. But so does compassion. That night taught me that not every haunting is evil. Sometimes it's a reminder of what happens when someone reaches out for help and no one is there to answer. It was one of those nights when the air itself feels heavy, like the world is holding its breath. I'd been driving for hours trying to make it back from my cousin's place in Ash Grove after helping him move. The interstate had been closed for construction, so I took an old county road that wound through endless stretches of pine forest. It was quiet, empty, and a little eerie, but I figured it'd save me 20 minutes. That was my first mistake. The second was ignoring the gas light that had been blinking for nearly 30 miles. By the time the engine coughed and died, I was deep in the woods, miles from anywhere. The headlights dimmed, then cut out completely. I tried the ignition twice, nothing but a dull click. "Perfect," I muttered, slamming the steering wheel. My phone was dead too. No signal, no bars, not even a flicker. For a while, I just sat there listening to the sound of rain starting to fall through the trees, a soft patter on the windshield. The forest beyond the glass was pure black, no moon, no stars. I grabbed my flashlight from the glove compartment and stepped out. The night air was thick and cold. I could hear the creak of branches, the distant croak of frogs somewhere deeper in. I locked the car automatically before realizing how pointless it was. The nearest person was probably 10 miles away. The road stretched in both directions like a ribbon into darkness. I had no idea which way was closer to town. After a few seconds, I decided to head east. There had to be a house or a farmhouse somewhere along here. The beam of my flashlight bounced over the gravel as I walked. The sound of my boots crunching on the stones was the only thing keeping me company. I tried humming just to break the silence, but my voice felt swallowed by the trees. I must have gone half a mile before I saw it, the faintest flicker of light between the trunks. A lantern. It swayed gently, a soft golden glow that moved as if someone were carrying it. "Hey!" I shouted, waving my flashlight. "Hey, can you help me?" The light didn't stop. It drifted a few feet farther, then paused. I started walking faster. At first, I figured someone must have been camping. People did that around here. Hunters, hikers, maybe some local just checking his property. But the deeper I went, the stranger it felt. The trees grew tighter, pressing close like walls. My flashlight beam seemed to fade against them, swallowed by shadow. The lantern bobbed ahead, always just far enough to keep me chasing. "Wait up," I called. "My car broke down, I just need to use a phone." The light moved again, slipping between two narrow pines. I cursed under my breath and pushed through a tangle of wet brush, twigs snapping beneath my boots. When I reached the clearing, I stopped. The lantern hung from a low branch, swinging gently, its glass fogged from the damp. No one was around. No footprints, no camping gear. Nothing but wet leaves and silence. The flame inside burned steady, though there was no wind to move it. I frowned, heart thudding. "Hello?" The forest gave no answer. I stepped closer, hesitated, then reached out. The metal was cold, slick with rain. I lifted the lantern down and held it up to the light. The wick was still glowing bright, but I couldn't see any fuel inside. That's when I heard it. From somewhere behind me, a voice. My voice. "Eric," it said softly. I froze. Every hair on my neck stood up. "Eric." It came again, closer now, calm and even, as if someone were standing just behind me, speaking directly into my ear. I spun around, flashlight shaking in my hand. Nothing, just the dark. Then I saw something between the trees. My own shape, my own shadow, standing a few yards away. It was impossible, but there it was. Same jacket, same boots, same flashlight, and it was smiling. I ran. I didn't think. I just turned and bolted through the trees, branches slapping against my face. The flashlight swung wildly, the beam jerking across trunks and roots. My lungs burned, but I didn't stop. Behind me, I could hear footsteps. Mine, but not mine. Each one perfectly matched my pace. "Eric," the voice called again, calm, patient, almost gentle. I crashed through the underbrush, stumbled, caught myself on a root. The flashlight slipped from my hand and went dark as it hit the mud. The forest closed around me like a coffin. For a long moment, I couldn't hear anything but my own breathing. Then, softly, the voice again. "You shouldn't have followed the light." I clamped my hands over my ears, squeezing my eyes shut. "This isn't happening," I muttered. "It's just stress. It's the dark. You're imagining it." But when I opened my eyes, I could see a faint glow ahead again, flickering between the trees. The lantern. Only now it wasn't hanging from a branch. It was lying on the ground. I stepped closer, against every instinct telling me to run the other way. The wick had burned low, the light dimming to a faint pulse. As I crouched to look, I saw footprints beside it, small ones, child-sized, leading deeper into the forest. And at the edge of the light, I saw something move. A figure no taller than my waist, standing still among the roots, watching me. At first I thought it was a trick of the light, a shadow cast wrong by the lantern's dying flame. But then it shifted, and I heard the faintest sound, a whisper almost drowned by the rain. "Don't go." It wasn't my voice this time. It was higher, smaller, like a child's. I took a step back. "Who's there?" "Don't go," it said again. The figure moved closer, just enough for me to see pale skin, wet hair plastered against its face. It couldn't have been older than 8 or 9. The eyes, though, they were wrong. Too dark, too deep, like looking into a well. I swallowed hard. "Are you lost? Are your parents here?" The child didn't answer. It pointed behind me instead, back the way I'd come. "Go," it said. "Don't follow." And then the lantern went out. Darkness swallowed everything. I turned, stumbling through the trees, blind and terrified. I ran until my legs burned, until the sound of rain on leaves became the only thing in the world. When I finally broke through the tree line, I saw the faint silver of the road ahead. My car was still there, sitting dead and silent under the dripping branches. I didn't look back. By the time the tow truck came the next morning, the sun had burned off the mist. The driver, a gray-haired man named Bill, gave me a look when I told him where my car had died. "You were lucky," he said. "Old Timber Road floods easy. Folks get lost out here sometimes." "Yeah," I said quietly. "I noticed." As we hooked the car up, I glanced back at the woods. In the daylight, they looked ordinary, just pines and mud, birds darting between the branches. But I couldn't shake what I'd seen. Before Bill climbed into the cab, I walked a few steps toward the tree line. There, half buried in the mud near where I'd parked, was something small and metal. A lantern. Cold. Empty. And next to it, a child's footprint pressed into the earth, facing away from the road. That night taught me something I'll never forget. Not every light in the dark is meant to guide you. Sometimes it's a warning, a reflection of the things we carry inside, fear, guilt, or curiosity that pushes too far. I learned that when you lose your way, the hardest thing isn't finding a path forward. It's knowing when to turn back. So the next time you see a light flicker where it shouldn't be, remember that not every glow is safety. Some things in the dark are meant to stay unseen. I've always believed the night shift at Walmart teaches you more about silence than any empty church ever could. My name's James Porter, 32 years old, and for the last 4 years I've been stocking shelves in a small-town Walmart off Highway 16 in Missouri. It wasn't much of a life, but it was mine. Steady hours, decent pay, quiet co-workers, and the strange calm that comes with working when the rest of the world's asleep. The store after midnight was a world of its own. The overhead fluorescents buzzed low, casting everything in a cold gray hue. Only half the lights stayed on, enough to see the aisles, but not enough to kill the shadows. Sometimes I'd push a cart down the cleaning aisle and catch my reflection in the freezer doors. Tired eyes, pale skin, a man who looked older than he was. There were only 5 of us that night. Me, Darren the security guard, a kid named Miguel restocking produce, Tanya handling inventory in the back, and old Larry sweeping floors. Darren spent most of his time at the front desk watching cameras. It was a quiet night like every other, until I heard the wheels. It started faint, like a single cart rolling down an aisle somewhere behind me. At first I figured it was Miguel messing around or one of those cleaning robots we used to test last month. But when I called out, "Miguel? That you, man?" the sound stopped dead. Silence. Then slowly it started again. The distinct rattle of a cartwheel catching on the tile, coming from the next aisle over. My stomach tightened as I stepped around the corner. The cart moved on its own, slowly coasting past the frozen section before tipping sideways with a clatter that echoed through the store. I froze. The air felt heavy, like the store itself was holding its breath. I took a slow step forward and looked around. Nothing. No one. Just aisles stretching into darkness. That's when I noticed something stranger. The cart's front wheels were smeared with mud. We hadn't had rain in 2 days and no customers had been inside since closing. I left it where it was and made my way to Darren at the front desk. He leaned back in his chair, half asleep. "Hey," I said, a little out of breath. "You got eyes on aisle 12? He rubbed his face. "What's up?" "Something's moving around back there. A cart just rolled by itself." He gave me that look, the kind you give someone who's been awake too long. Maybe it was just on a slope. "The floor's flat, man." He sighed, pulled up the feed, and rewound. "Here, let's take a look." The screen flickered through aisles in grainy black and white. Then we saw it. A shopping cart rolled slowly down aisle 12, turning left at the end without anyone behind it. For a second, Darren looked amused, until something caught both our eyes. Behind the shelves, just barely visible in the camera's corner, a tall, dark figure moved parallel to the cart. Darren leaned in. "What the hell?" The figure didn't look like a shadow. It moved with purpose, one aisle behind where I had been, matching my path. No face, no details, just height and shape. When the cart tipped, the figure stopped, head turning toward the camera before fading into the next aisle. "Holy shit," I whispered. "We're not alone." Darren stood up, grabbed his flashlight. "All right, let's check it out. Could be someone who stayed in after closing." But something in my gut told me that wasn't it. We searched aisle by aisle, lights humming above, the sound of our boots echoing against the tile. Darren's flashlight swept across shelves of cereal, shampoo, and stacked soda bottles. Every aisle looked the same, too clean, too empty. "You check the freezers," he said. "I'll take toys and electronics." I nodded and pushed through the swinging doors into the frozen goods section. The air there was colder, biting through my thin uniform. My reflection followed me in the glass doors as I walked. I tried to convince myself it was nothing. Maybe some drunk wandered in before closing. Maybe a glitch in the cameras. But the mud on that cart told a different story. When I reached the back corner, I saw something on the floor, muddy footprints, big ones, heavy like work boots. They trailed between freezers, then disappeared near the employee-only door that led to the loading dock. "Darren," I called quietly. He jogged over, beam of light catching the prints. "These fresh?" "Yeah, look at the tread." He crouched. "Could be from earlier deliveries." "No deliveries tonight," I said. "Truck's not due till morning." The prints led us to the loading dock door. Darren reached for the handle. It was locked, but the metal latch looked bent, like it had been forced from the outside. He swore under his breath. "We'll check the cameras again." Back at the desk, he rewound the footage for the loading bay. At first, it was just static. Then, at 2:58 a.m., the door shuddered slightly. A minute later, it opened a few inches before closing again. "Someone came in," Darren said quietly. "But look, no alarm." That meant the person either had a key or disabled the sensor. He picked up his radio. "Tanya, Miguel, Larry, everyone come to the front desk now." Their voices crackled through the speaker, tired and confused. Within a few minutes, the team gathered. Darren explained what we saw. Miguel looked pale. "You mean someone's in the store?" "Maybe," Darren said. "We're doing another sweep." Larry frowned. "I've been mopping all night, ain't seen nobody." "Stay together this time," Darren ordered. "Nobody splits up." We moved in pairs. Tanya stuck close to Miguel. I stayed with Darren. Every sound seemed louder, the hum of the coolers, the creak of the ceiling vents, even the soft squeak of our shoes. When we reached the garden section, I noticed the faintest draft near the emergency exit door. The top latch was unhooked. Darren pointed his flashlight. Someone's been here." He pushed the door open. Cold night air swept in, carrying the smell of dirt and grass. Just beyond the pavement, faint footprints led into the open field behind the store. We stood there for a long minute, staring into the dark. "I'm calling the cops," Darren said finally. "We're locking this place down." I couldn't argue, because deep down I knew whoever or whatever had walked those aisles hadn't just left by accident. It felt like we'd been watched. And maybe, just maybe, we still were. The police came around 5 a.m., right before sunrise. 2 cruisers, sleepy officers, and a dog that kept whining at the back door like it smelled something it didn't like. They searched the field, found the footprints, took statements, and left us with the standard advice: keep the doors locked, call if anything else happens. But nothing ever really feels the same after something like that. For the next few nights, I kept glancing down every aisle, expecting to see movement. Darren said he rechecked all the doors. No forced entry since, no alarms, no missing items. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that we'd missed something. Then, 3 nights later, the cameras caught it again. It was 3:07 a.m., and I was restocking milk when Darren radioed me. "James, you near aisle 9? "Yeah, why?" "You might want to get up here. Now." At the monitor, he replayed the footage from a few minutes earlier. There it was again, the figure. Same height, same stride, walking along the back of the store. Except this time it wasn't alone. Behind it, faint and flickering in the camera's grain, were more shapes. 4, maybe 5, moving slowly, out of sync, like they were wandering. Darren froze the frame. "Looks like shadows," he said. "But shadows of what?" He called the cops again. They searched the place top to bottom but found nothing. No signs of entry, no tracks outside. The cameras showed movement, but the motion sensors hadn't triggered once. The chief finally said, "Could be interference. Those systems glitch sometimes." Darren didn't argue, but I could tell he didn't buy it. Neither did I. Later that night, when I went to grab more stock from the back room, I heard something again. Soft, rhythmic tapping, like someone drumming their fingers on metal. It came from behind the freezers. I walked closer, heart pounding. The tapping stopped. Then a whisper, low and hoarse, right behind the wall. "James." I spun around. No one. The next day, I took matters into my own hands. I asked Darren to pull all footage from the last 2 weeks. We went through hours of video, frame by frame. The figure appeared 3 separate nights, always around 3 a.m., always walking the same route, from the loading dock, through frozen goods, past toys, and disappearing near the employee break room. When I slowed the footage, I noticed something else. The figure never cast a shadow. I didn't tell Darren that part. He already looked exhausted. We set up a motion-triggered audio recorder in the frozen section. The next night, while everyone was working, it captured faint footsteps around 2:59, followed by a dragging sound and something like shallow breathing. Tanya quit the next morning. That left just me, Darren, and Miguel. The manager tried to bring in a new guard for the night shift, but he didn't last more than 2 nights before calling in sick permanently. Word got around. People said the place was haunted. Corporate brushed it off as small-town gossip. Then, 1 week later, we found something behind the store. Darren called me outside. The grass near the field was disturbed, flattened into a narrow trail that led toward the woods. In the mud, we found old plastic name tags, Walmart employee tags, 6 of them, but none of those names matched anyone currently working. The dates on the back? From 1999. Our store wasn't even built until 2003. Darren's face went pale. "You think this is some prank?" "Yeah," I said quietly, "but not a funny one." That night he called corporate security to review everything. They promised an audit team would visit next week, but the audit never happened, because by then things got worse. It happened 2 nights later. I was stocking detergent when the power flickered. Once, twice, then darkness. Emergency lights kicked in, dim red glows painting the aisles like tunnels of blood. My radio crackled with Darren's voice. "James, you good?" "Yeah, power's out again." "Stay put. I'm checking the main panel." I waited, trying to calm my breathing. The hum of the freezer stopped, leaving only silence. Then, faint footsteps behind me. Slow, careful, coming closer. I turned. Nothing. My heart hammered. "Darren?" I called out. Then, from the far end of the aisle, something stepped out of the shadows. Tall, broad shoulders, moving in jerky motions like its limbs didn't bend right. My flashlight trembled in my hand. I aimed it toward the thing, and the beam cut straight through it, hitting the shelves behind. It wasn't solid. The figure tilted its head, and I swear I heard the faintest whisper, like breath through static. "Go home." The light snapped back on. The aisle was empty. I ran to the front desk. Darren was gone. The monitor showed only static on every feed except one, the camera above the front doors. On that screen, Darren stood outside, staring into the field. Then something tall moved behind him. I ran outside, shouting his name. The air was cold, still. His flashlight lay in the grass, beam flickering. But no Darren. They never found him. I used to think the late shift was peaceful. The world outside went quiet. The customers thinned out, and for a few hours, it felt like time slowed down. But that night changed the way I felt about quiet forever. My name's Jenna Whitlow, 26, waitress at a roadside diner off Route 23 in Ohio. It's one of those old places that's been there longer than anyone remembers. Sticky floors, neon sign that flickers half the letters, and a jukebox that only works when you hit it twice. I'd been working there almost 3 years, saving up to go back to school. The late shift didn't pay much, but it kept me away from the noise of my roommates' parties and gave me time to think. It was a Thursday in early November, the kind of night where the wind cut through your jacket no matter how tight you pulled it. We'd just closed up, me, Linda, the manager, and Earl, the cook who'd been frying burgers since the 80s. I was tired, my feet aching from the 10-hour shift. The last customer had left around 11, a trucker who tipped in quarters. "Good work tonight, hun," Linda said as she locked up the front doors. "You sure you don't want to ride?" "I'm fine," I said, forcing a smile. "Just need some air." She gave me that mom look, half concern, half exhaustion, then waved and headed to her car. Earl followed a few minutes later, mumbling about the Browns game and leaving a trail of cigarette smoke behind him. By the time I finished wiping the counter and clocking out, it was almost midnight. The parking lot was nearly empty. Just Linda's car, my beat-up Ford Focus, and one old blue sedan I didn't recognize. It sat near the far light post, engine off, but windows fogged slightly from the cold. From where I stood, I could see something glowing faintly inside. I pulled my coat tighter and started walking toward my car. The air smelled like wet asphalt. My keys jingled in my hand, that nervous habit of mine when I'm alone. That's when I heard it, a sound drifting from the sedan. A song, soft, tinny, like it was coming from a broken speaker. It took me a second to realize what it was, a lullaby. "Hush, little baby, don't say a word." The kind of tune mothers sing when the world feels safe, but the world didn't feel safe right then. I froze for a moment, scanning the lot. No one else around. No one in the driver's seat that I could see. I walked faster. When I reached my car door, the sedan's headlights flicked on, blinding me. I gasped, shielding my eyes. "Hey!" I called out, my voice cracking. The driver's door opened. A man stepped out, tall, wearing a dark hoodie pulled over his face. He moved slowly, almost calmly, holding something in his right hand, a small brown paper bag. He stopped about 10 feet away, his voice low and hoarse. "You dropped this?" My throat tightened. "What?" He took a step closer, still holding the bag out. I could see his face a little then, pale skin, dark eyes, but familiar somehow, like someone you've seen in a dream and can't quite place. "I think you dropped this," he said again. I shook my head. "I don't know you." He hesitated, then crouched down and placed the bag gently on the ground. "You forgot to say goodbye," he whispered. Then he walked backward, slow and deliberate, fading into the shadows behind the sedan. The headlights turned off. The lullaby kept playing. I didn't wait to think. I dove into my car, locked the doors, and started the engine with shaking hands. My heart felt like it was beating in my throat. I backed out so fast I nearly clipped the curb. The sedan stayed still as I sped down the road, the music fading behind me. By the time I reached the first stoplight, I was trembling so hard my keys rattled against the steering column. I told myself it was nothing. Some creep, maybe drunk, playing a joke. But deep down, I knew there was more to it. At the red light, curiosity got the better of me. I grabbed the paper bag from the passenger seat. It was light, almost weightless. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was something shiny. I froze. It was my name tag, the one that said Jenna in chipped red letters. I'd lost it months ago, back in August. I remembered tearing the place apart looking for it. I'd even asked Linda if she'd seen it, but it never turned up. We just printed a new one. But here it was, in a stranger's hand. Beneath it, a small folded note. My stomach turned as I unfolded it. The handwriting was shaky, uneven, almost childlike. "You forgot to say goodbye." I dropped it like it burned me. The light turned green, but I couldn't move. My eyes filled with tears. How could someone have it? And what did that even mean? Goodbye to who? When I finally got home, I locked every door twice. My roommate wasn't there, out with her boyfriend again, so it was just me and the humming of the refrigerator. I sat on the couch, staring at that bag on the table. I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd seen the man before. Not just his build or his voice, but something in the way he moved. Hesitant, deliberate. It clawed at my memory, like a name on the tip of your tongue. And then it hit me. There was a man who used to come into the diner months ago. Always sat at the counter, ordered black coffee and cherry pie. Never said much, just watched me work. His name was Tom, or at least that's what the credit card said. He stopped coming after August. The same month I lost my name tag. My skin went cold. The next morning, I told Linda what happened. She frowned, concerned but skeptical. "Probably just some weirdo," she said. "You sure it wasn't one of those prank guys on TikTok?" "It wasn't a prank," I said. "He knew my name. He had my old tag." That made her pause. "You should file a report, Jenna. I'll check the cameras." I did call the police that afternoon. The officer took my statement, nodded a lot, and promised to patrol the area, but he didn't sound convinced. "Maybe someone found your name tag and thought it'd be funny," he said. I wanted to scream. That night I barely slept. Around 2 a.m. my phone buzzed with a blocked number. I answered before I could stop myself. No voice, just that same lullaby playing softly through the speaker. I hung up and threw the phone across the room. The next day at work, Linda told me the cameras didn't catch much, just static near the time I left. The blue sedan's plates were unreadable. "You can take a few days off," she said gently. "You look like hell." I nodded, grateful but scared. I didn't want to be home alone, but I couldn't stay there either. Every sound made me flinch. I started sleeping with the lights on. 2 nights later, I woke to a noise outside my apartment window. A faint scraping. I crept to the blinds and peeked out. On the hood of my car, under the streetlight, was a single red rose wrapped in napkin paper. The cops took it seriously this time. They found a partial fingerprint on the napkin, smudged, but enough to trace it. The name they gave me made my knees go weak. Thomas Whitlow, my brother. I hadn't seen him in 8 years. He'd disappeared after Mom's funeral, drifted from town to town. We weren't close. He'd struggled with addiction, trouble with the law, all of it. The last thing he ever said to me was over the phone. "You left me, Jen. You didn't even say goodbye." I thought he'd overdosed years ago. Guess I was wrong. The police found him 2 days later, living out of that blue sedan. They said he was confused, maybe unstable. When they questioned him, all he said was, "I just wanted her to remember me." They showed me what was in his car, my old name tag, a photo of us as kids, and dozens of paper bags with messages scrawled on them. "Don't forget. Come home. Say goodbye." I cried harder than I had in years. Thomas was admitted to a mental health facility. The doctor said he'd been following me for months, too afraid to approach. The night he handed me the bag, he wasn't trying to hurt me. He just wanted connection. I visited him once. He looked older, thinner, eyes lost but gentle. "You scared me," I told him. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I didn't mean to." We talked for a long time. When I left, I hugged him and finally said the words I hadn't before. "Goodbye, Tommy." He smiled faintly. That's all I wanted. Sometimes the ghosts that haunt us aren't dead. They're people we left behind, unfinished conversations, broken promises, silent goodbyes. Never leave words unsaid, because one day, silence might come looking for you. Most folks think working nights at a garage is quiet, peaceful even. They picture an old radio humming classic rock, the smell of oil and coffee, maybe a light rain tapping the roof. Sometimes it was like that, but other nights felt wrong, like the world had forgotten you existed. My name's Travis Cole, 31, and I'd been a mechanic since high school. I worked at Mason's Auto Repair, a squat concrete building just off Route 19, surrounded by fields and the kind of woods that get too dark after sunset. My boss, Rick Mason, trusted me enough to close up alone on Fridays. Said I had the right head for solitude. I never knew if that was a compliment or not. That night was colder than usual for October. The wind had a whistle to it, slipping through the garage vents and making the big overhead doors rattle. I was tuning up a silver Chevy Malibu, transmission flush, spark plug replacement, the usual, when I noticed the security door to the alley cracked open about 2 inches. Just wide enough for someone to watch from outside. I sighed, assuming Rick had forgotten to latch it earlier. He was always in a hurry to leave on Fridays, eager to catch poker night at the bar. I wiped my hands, walked over and shut it tight. The metal clanked, echoing down the hall. Damn wind, I muttered. The radio in the corner buzzed with static before cutting back to Tom Petty. I went back to work, rolling under the lift to check a leaking hose. That's when I heard it. The faint squeak of rubber on concrete. It was small, like a tire rolling slowly across the floor. I rolled out from under the car and stood up. There beside lift 2, a Zingle tire. Spun lazily in place before wobbling to a stop. No one else was in the shop. I looked toward the front, thinking maybe Rick had come back or a customer had wandered in, but the front doors were locked and the windows dark. I picked up the tire. It was one I'd stacked against the wall earlier. Heavy, clean, not the kind to roll on its own. A cold sweat prickled my neck. I put the tire back and tried to shake it off. Probably didn't set it straight, I told myself. But when I glanced up at the security camera monitor, my stomach turned. For a split second before the screen glitched into static, there was a figure standing behind me, tall, blurry, motionless. Then it was gone. The first thought that hit me wasn't ghosts or monsters. It was burglars. The garage wasn't fancy, but there were expensive tools, compressors, and diagnostic equipment worth a lot on the black market. I grabbed the nearest thing that could serve as a weapon, a 12-inch wrench, and walked toward the back hall, trying to sound braver than I felt. The lights hummed overhead, some flickering every few seconds like dying fireflies. My boots echoed on the concrete. "Hello?" I called out. "If someone's here, you'd better speak up. I already called the cops." That was a lie, but it made me feel better. Silence. I checked the office, the restroom, even the storage closet. Empty. The back door was closed tight. I tried the handle, locked. When I turned around, I nearly dropped the wrench. The tire was back in the middle of the floor again, spinning slowly. No sound, no footsteps, just the lazy spin of black rubber on gray concrete. I backed away, heart pounding. The camera monitor flickered again, this time showing static lines crawling up the screen. I could barely breathe. The air in the garage felt heavier, like someone was standing just behind me again. Screw this, I thought. I'm out. I darted to the office phone, but the line was dead. That's when I remembered. Rick had mentioned last week that the phone company was doing maintenance overnight. No signal, no Wi-Fi. Perfect. So I did the only thing I could think of, ran for the front door. But as I reached for the handle, the overhead garage door began to close behind me. The motor groaned as the metal slats descended. I didn't touch the switch. It was supposed to be locked in the up position. Someone, or something, was shutting me in. I jammed my wrench under the track before it could seal shut, squeezed through the gap, and stumbled out into the cold night air. My breath came out in clouds as I sprinted toward the street. When I reached the edge of the lot, I turned back just once. The light over the main bay flickered twice, and in the glow, I swear I saw a shadow move across the glass. When the patrol car rolled up 10 minutes later, I was pacing by the curb, still gripping the wrench like it was a lifeline. Officer at a Daniels. who knew me from high school, stepped out, squinting under his flashlight. "Travis, you call this in?" "Yeah," I said, trying to steady my voice. "Someone broke in. I saw them on the cameras." He frowned. "All right, let's take a look." We searched the whole building. He checked every corner, every cabinet. Nothing. No open drawers, no missing tools. But when he looked at the rear security door, he crouched down and pointed with his flashlight. "See that?" he said. "Pry marks. Fresh ones." He also found footprints near the back, muddy, leading toward the tree line beyond the fence. A single set. They ended halfway into the woods. Daniels radioed for backup, then looked at me. "Whoever it was, they didn't get what they wanted. You're lucky." "Lucky?" I said. "They were in here with me. I saw them." He nodded slowly. "Probably hiding, watching you, waiting." That word stuck in my head. Waiting. I didn't go back for 2 days. Rick understood, though he wasn't thrilled. "Insurance will cover the damage," he said. "You didn't leave the door open, did you?" "No," I told him. "I made sure." But at night, I kept hearing things in my apartment. Little creaks, the hum of the fridge that sounded too much like breathing. Every shadow looked like a figure standing just out of reach. I kept the wrench on my nightstand like a weapon. On Sunday, Daniels called. We pulled prints from the door. No matches in the system. Whoever it was, they've done this before. Careful type. Maybe casing other garages. That didn't make me feel better. It made me realize how close I'd come to disappearing into those woods like the footprints. When I finally went back to work Monday, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The cameras were fixed, but every time I glanced at the monitor, I half expected that same blurry shape to appear behind me again. Sometimes I'd think I saw movement in the reflection of a hubcap or the sheen of a windshield. It wasn't ghosts I was afraid of. It was the kind of patience that real people have. The kind that waits, learns your schedule, studies your habits. That night I kept the main lights on. I didn't listen to the radio. And when I locked up, I checked every door twice. A week passed before things felt normal again. Business picked up, and the story faded into local gossip. Daniel stopped by once to tell me they found a burned-out campfire in the woods behind the shop. Empty food cans, cigarette butts, and a pair of worn-out boots. Whoever had been watching me had stayed close, maybe living there for days. I still think about that sometimes, how long they were out there waiting for me to make one mistake. If I hadn't heard that tire roll, if I hadn't turned around at the right second, maybe the story would have ended differently. Now every night when I lock the garage, I glance at the cameras one last time and say out loud, "We're closed." It's stupid, but it makes me feel like I'm talking to whoever might still be listening. And when the wind pushes at that back door, I don't brush it off anymore. They say New York never sleeps. Maybe that's true for the tourists or the yellow cabs or the neon signs that blink long after midnight. But for people like me, young, broke, and just trying to make rent, it does sleep. It sleeps in quiet corners, in empty streets, in those hours when the world feels half dead and you start to hear your own heartbeat in the silence. My name's Kearney, Ella Monroe, and I've lived in the city long enough to know that silence isn't always peaceful. Sometimes it's the loudest thing you'll ever hear. I moved here right after college, chasing the kind of dream they sell you in glossy magazines. A publishing job, a walk-up apartment, endless coffee, and maybe a cat. I got all of that, except the cat. What I didn't expect was how lonely it could get once the novelty wore off. My friends had scattered, my parents were 2 states away, and my neighbors were ghosts with Wi-Fi. That night, the night everything changed, I stayed late at the office. We were closing a campaign, and I didn't notice how late it had gotten until the cleaning crew started vacuuming around my desk. When I finally left, the subway was half empty. I took the L train to Bedford. Same as always, clutching my tote bag like a lifeline. I remember thinking about leftover Thai food waiting in the fridge, how I'd microwave it and watch reruns until I passed out. Normal thoughts, harmless thoughts. The walk from the subway to my apartment was just 5 blocks, but it always stretched longer after midnight. The city changed character at that hour. Streetlights buzzed instead of shone, alleys breathed, and every sound felt sharper. The slap of my sneakers on the pavement, the hum of a distant car, the rustle of plastic bags in the gutter. Halfway down the second block, I noticed it. A streetlight flickering ahead of me, sputtering like it couldn't make up its mind whether to live or die. And beneath it, a man. He stood perfectly still, hands clasped behind his back, facing the street like he was waiting for someone. Or something. His clothes were dark, his face half hidden in shadow. I couldn't make out details, but something about his stillness was wrong. People on city streets move. They smoke, check their phones, shift weight. He didn't. I crossed to the other side, pretending to scroll through my phone, but I could feel his gaze. The hairs on my neck stood up, and when I passed the light, his shadow stretched across the street, long and thin, reaching for mine. I quickened my pace. My keys were already in my hand, clenched tight. By the time I reached my building, my pulse was racing. I turned once, just to make sure. The streetlight flickered again, and he was gone. Relief hit me like a wave, and I laughed. One of those nervous, shaky laughs that don't sound like you. Probably just some guy waiting for a ride, I told myself. Or a drunk who wandered too far from a bar. City weirdness. Nothing more. Then I saw my door. Someone had carved something into the wood, the marks fresh and uneven. It took me a moment to understand what I was looking at. A street light. And beneath it, my name. Ella. Etched deep and clean, the grooves glowing faintly under the yellow bulb outside. I dropped my keys. The next morning, I convinced myself it had to be a prank. Maybe the neighborhood kids. Maybe one of my neighbors thought it was funny. Still, when I looked at the carving in daylight, my stomach twisted. The etching was too deliberate, too precise. The wood was gouged deep. Not like a key or a coin could have done it. More like a knife. I took a photo and sent it to my super, Mr. Vargas, with a message. Someone vandalized my door last night. Can you check the security cameras? He didn't reply right away. He never did. The man treated text messages like ransom notes. I left for work with my nerves buzzing, jumped at small noises on the subway, and kept scanning faces in the crowd. Every bald head or dark coat looked like him. The man under the streetlight. At the office, my coworker, Lydia, noticed something was off. "You look like you didn't sleep," she said, stirring her coffee. "I didn't," I admitted. "What's wrong?" I hesitated. Telling her felt ridiculous. "Just weird vibes walking home last night." She smiled, a mix of sympathy and city girl caution. "Girl, get a rideshare. It's 2025. No one walks home alone at 1 a.m. anymore." I laughed it off, but her words stuck. Still that night I took the same route. Force of habit or stubbornness. Maybe I wanted to prove to myself that I wasn't scared. When I turned onto my street, the light was still flickering. But the man wasn't there. Instead, something else was. A folded piece of paper taped to my door, fluttering in the wind. My name written across it in blocky letters. I tore it down, heart hammering, and unfolded it. Inside, one sentence. "You look better in the dark." I called the police that night. They took a report, asked routine questions. "Did you see who left it?" "No." "Any enemies, exes, co-workers?" "No." They promised to send a car around the neighborhood, but I knew how that worked. No one was coming unless someone got hurt. Mr. Vargas finally texted back the next morning. "Cameras were out. Power issue. Sorry." Of course they were. By Friday, I'd stopped sleeping. Every creak of the pipes, every footstep in the hall made me flinch. I taped over the peephole and pushed my dresser against the door. My phone stayed beside my bed, flashlight app ready. Saturday night, I heard something new. Tapping. 3 slow taps, metal on metal, coming from the hallway. I held my breath, straining to listen. Then silence. I opened my door just a crack. The hallway was empty, but taped to my doorknob was another note. Smile for the light. I slammed the door, called Lydia. She didn't answer. I left a voicemail that was more like a sob. Then I called my mom, pretending everything was fine. I didn't want her to worry. The next day, I asked the deli guy downstairs if he'd seen anyone hanging around. He frowned. Tall man, black coat. Yeah, couple nights ago. Standing under the streetlight out front. Didn't move for like an hour. Gave me chills. I thanked him and walked home with a police report clutched in my purse, wondering why nobody else cared as much as I did. It was raining that Tuesday. Cold, slick rain that made the streetlight glow like molten gold. I tried to tell myself I was imagining things, that the notes and carvings could be explained away. But deep down, I knew. He was watching. When I reached my building, the light above the stoop flickered once, and then steadied. He was there, standing beneath it again, hands clasped behind his back, head tilted like he was studying me. Same dark coat, same frozen stance. I forced my voice steady. What do you want? He smiled, slow and deliberate. You walked in the dark, he said softly. Now the dark walks with you. I turned and ran. Up the stairs, keys fumbling in the lock, slamming the door behind me. I didn't stop shaking for an hour. When I finally dared to look through the window, he was gone again. But on the glass, traced in fog, were 3 words. Under the light. I moved out 2 weeks later, packed everything I owned into boxes and begged Lydia to help me find a sublet. She didn't argue. She'd seen the fear in my eyes. The last night in that apartment, I stood by the door one final time. The carving was still there, faint but visible. I traced my fingers over it, wondering who he was, what he wanted, and whether he'd found someone new to watch. When I turned to leave, the hallway lights flickered, and just for a heartbeat, I swore I saw him at the far end smiling. I didn't look back again. Trust your instincts, especially when something feels off in familiar places. The world's dangers don't always come crashing in with noise and violence. Sometimes they wait quietly under the streetlights watching. Never ignore that quiet voice inside that tells you to turn around, leave early, or cross the street. Awareness can save your life, but denial can invite the dark to follow you home. When I bought my house on Maple Street 8 years ago, I thought I'd hit the jackpot. A quiet neighborhood tucked between the river and the highway, far enough from downtown to escape the sirens but close enough for a 20-minute commute. I was 29, a maintenance tech for the city, the kind of guy who fixed other people's problems but never had much excitement of his own. My place sat next to an old boarding house, a 3-story relic from the 1940s. It had peeling green paint, crooked shutters, and a wraparound porch that sagged in the middle. For years, it had been mostly empty, except for the occasional renter who stayed a few months and vanished. The landlord, Mr. Gibson, was an older man who showed up once in a while to mow the patchy lawn or hammer loose boards back into place. I never minded the place. It gave my street a bit of character, something to look at while drinking my morning coffee in the kitchen. From my window, I could see one of its upper rooms clearly, though the curtains were always drawn. Nights were peaceful, and I got used to that particular stillness where even the hum of my refrigerator felt loud. Then, early one March evening, I saw movement next door for the first time in months. A pickup truck idled out front, its headlights cutting through the dusk. A man stepped out, tall, maybe mid-40s, wearing a gray coat and carrying a single box. No movers, no furniture, just that box. I watched him climb the porch steps and disappear inside. I remember thinking, finally, someone brave enough to rent that place again. Over the next few nights, the lights in the upstairs room came on. Then they didn't. Then they did again, faint and yellow, like an old bulb struggling to stay alive. I'd glance up from washing dishes and see him standing there, perfectly still at the window looking straight toward my kitchen. At first, I figured it was coincidence. Maybe our routines just lined up, both of us staring absent-mindedly out windows after work. But after a week, it stopped feeling like coincidence. He never moved, never used his phone, never looked anywhere else. Always watching. The human brain is good at making excuses. Mine came up with plenty. Maybe he was shy. Maybe he was depressed. Maybe he liked the view of my backyard maple tree. Still, every evening around 9 when I switched on my kitchen light, he was there. Same spot, same shadowed face. I tried to ignore it. I'd pull the blinds, but curiosity is a cruel habit. After a few minutes, I'd peek again, and sure enough, he hadn't budged. The window between us felt like a two-way mirror. A Friday night in April, I decided to break the tension. I raised my mug in a mock toast, half smiling. No response. Not even a tilt of the head. The light behind him flickered once, twice, then went out completely. My own reflection stared back at me in the dark glass. I slept poorly that night. Around 3 a.m., I woke to a soft tap, tap, tap at my back door. At first, I thought it was branches in the wind. Then it came again, 3 slow taps, like knuckles on wood. My dog, Rufus, lifted his head and whimpered. I grabbed the flashlight and crept downstairs. The kitchen clock glowed 3:14. My heart hammered so loud it drowned out everything else. I swung open the door in one motion, beams slicing through the yard. Nothing. No footprints on the deck, no wind, no rain. Just stillness. When I looked up, the boarding house window blinked to life. Light flickering, curtain swaying slightly. I stood there shivering, though the air was warm, feeling like the world had tilted half an inch off center. By morning, I was done pretending it was harmless. I marched next door. The porch groaned under my boots, the smell of dust thick in the air. The door was padlocked. "Hey!" I shouted, pounding the frame. "You think it's funny messing with people in the middle of the night?" Silence. I circled the house, checked the driveway. No truck, no tire marks. The only movement came from a loose shutter banging softly against the siding. A neighbor walking her dog slowed when she saw me. "You looking for somebody?" "Yeah, the new tenant. Moved in last week." She frowned. "Honey, nobody's lived there for months. Place is for sale. Didn't you see the sign?" I hadn't, but there it was, half hidden behind a lilac bush. "For sale. Gibson Realty," in fading blue paint. I called Mr. Gibson's number from the sign. He picked up on the second ring, sounding groggy. "Mr. Gibson? It's Justin Reed from next door. Did someone rent the upstairs?" "What? No. House has been empty since December." I hesitated. "I've been seeing someone in the window. A man." He exhaled sharply. "Son, that house doesn't have power. They shut it off 3 months ago." I thanked him and hung up, my fingers trembling. If there was no power, how had the light flickered? That night, I tried to tell myself it was reflection. Streetlight, passing car, imagination. But as darkness fell, I couldn't stop glancing toward that window. It remained dark, empty. For the first time in weeks, I felt relief, until Rufus started growling at the kitchen door. I turned off the TV, the room falling into an uneasy quiet. Rufus stood rigid, ears forward, eyes locked on the window above the sink. "Easy, buddy," I whispered. I stepped closer, heart thudding. The backyard was a pool of darkness. Nothing moved. My own reflection hovered in the glass, pale, tired, ridiculous for scaring myself. Then the reflection shifted. Someone else was there, just behind my shoulder. A shape, tall and thin. My breath hitched. I spun around. Empty kitchen. No sound but Rufus's whine. When I turned back, the reflection was gone, but the faint outline of a handprint smeared the inside of the glass. Inside. I stumbled backward, knocking over a chair. Adrenaline surged. Logic drowned. I grabbed my phone, dialed 911, and told the dispatcher someone was in my house. Officers arrived 10 minutes later, swept every room, found nothing. No forced entry, no footprints. One of them gave me that look people reserve for the half-crazy. "Probably just light distortion," he said. "Happens with double-pane windows." "Distortion doesn't leave handprints," I muttered. After they left, I scrubbed the glass clean, locked every door, and left every light on. Sleep never came. Days passed without incident. The for sale sign stayed planted in the neighbor's yard. I started convincing myself it had been stress, lack of sleep, shadows playing tricks. Then one night in May, I came home late from a double shift. The kitchen lights were off. I must have forgotten to leave them on. I set my keys down, crossed the dark room, and something stopped me cold. In the black reflection of the window, a face stared back. Not mine. The same gray-coated man, eyes hollow, expression unreadable. On his side of the glass, the faint outline of my kitchen glowed behind him, as if he were inside, and I were the one outside looking in. The light in the boarding house flickered once more across the yard, echoing like distant lightning. When it steadied, the window was empty. I moved out the next week. Sometimes the scariest things aren't supernatural. They're the moments when reality itself blurs, and we ignore what our instincts are screaming. Trust what you see and feel, even when others dismiss it. Awareness is the thin glass between safety and danger, and once it cracks, no amount of light can make you unsee what's been staring back all along. Most people think stores shut down when the last customer leaves, but that's when the real work begins. I was 26 when I joined the overnight cleaning crew at the Target off Route 17. The pay wasn't great, but it covered my rent and gave me hours that fit around community college classes. Nights there were strange, half alive, half dead. All the red and white of the daytime hustle turned dull and echoing after midnight. There were 6 of us on staff that night crew: me, Luis the floor tech, Sharon the supervisor, and a few temps who rotated every week. We clocked in at 10 p.m., right after the evening manager locked the doors. Once those heavy red doors latched, it felt like the world outside disappeared. No customers, no noise, just the hum of machines and the sound of our own footsteps. I liked the solitude at first. The big box aisles felt endless, like empty streets in a quiet town. Sometimes I'd plug in my earbuds, push the vacuum, and pretend I was anywhere else. That night was a Wednesday, late October. Rain hammered the roof like gravel, and the parking lot lights flickered against puddles. It was the kind of night that made the store feel even more isolated, like a ship at sea. By 2 a.m., the others were finishing their sections. I was assigned to electronics, flat screens, display phones, shelves of video games that always needed dusting. The vacuum whirred beneath the fluorescent buzz. I remember glancing at the dark reflection in the TV screens, my own tired face staring back at me. Then, faint and clear, came the sound of a scanner beeping, that sharp electronic chirp from the front registers. I froze. That noise only happened when something was scanned at checkout, but the registers were off after midnight. "Luis," I called out, pulling my earbuds free. "You restocking up front?" No answer, just the steady hum of the ceiling vents. I told myself it was the system glitching. The scanners sometimes made noise during maintenance. But when it beeped again, 3 short bursts in a row, I felt the hairs on my arms rise. I walked slowly out of electronics, the vacuum cord dragging behind me like a lifeline. The store stretched quiet and dim toward the registers, rows of motionless mannequins and locked cases reflecting pale light. "Hello?" I called again. "Sharon? Anyone up front?" Nothing. The beeping stopped abruptly, replaced by a low click from the overhead lights. Half the store dimmed to energy-saving mode. It always happened automatically around 2:15 a.m. But this time the timing felt wrong, like the building itself was responding to me. I set the vacuum down and followed the main aisle. Each step echoed, bouncing off the linoleum. My shoes squeaked on the floor wax Luis had just laid down near cosmetics. As I approached the front, I could see the red glow of the Target logo reflected off the glass doors. The rows of checkout lanes stretched out before me, quiet and empty. Then something moved. A shadow ducked low behind one of the far registers. I caught it in the corner of my eye. Quick, deliberate, not the flicker of a light. "Hey!" I shouted, my voice cracking. "You're not supposed to be in here." I waited. Nothing answered. The sound of my own breathing filled the silence. I thought of calling security, but the store didn't have overnight guards, just the cleaning crew. The cameras fed to a remote system that no one watched in real time. Another thought hit me harder. The doors were locked from the inside. No one was supposed to be able to get in after closing. Unless they never left. I turned and ran. The staff exit near the stockroom was only 50 yards away, but those 50 yards felt endless. Every sound in that building seemed to chase me. The hum of the lights, the squeak of the floors, even the rain outside slapping against the glass. I reached the exit, slammed my ID badge against the panel and yanked the handle. It didn't move. "Come on," I hissed. I tried again. Nothing. The door was locked. From the outside. That shouldn't have been possible. The door automatically unlocked when the badge scanned, unless someone had switched it manually. My pulse thudded in my ears. I could hear faint movement from somewhere deep in the store, the creak of a cart, the shuffle of feet. "Luis," I shouted. "Sharon, you there?" No reply. I ducked into the stockroom, weaving between boxes and pallets stacked head-high. My flashlight beam cut through the dark, landing on a set of fresh footprints in the dust. Boot prints, heavy and deliberate, not from any of our crew. Then I saw it. At the far end of the room, next to the emergency door, sat a pile of merchandise. Tablets, headphones, cameras, stacked neatly like someone was preparing to carry them out. I crouched behind a stack of cardboard, heart pounding. Someone had broken in, that much was clear. But why hadn't they grabbed the stuff and run? I could hear soft footsteps now moving along the back wall. Then silence. Then the faintest sound of breathing, not mine. The realization hit me like ice. Whoever it was, they weren't running from me. They were all waiting, watching. I forced myself to move. I edged toward the maintenance hallway, hoping to find the phone near the manager's office. The air felt heavier the farther I went, like the store itself was holding its breath. When I reached the hallway corner, I heard the faint creak of a door behind me. I turned and caught a glimpse of someone slipping out of sight. A man, tall, wearing dark clothes. "Stop!" I yelled, but the word cracked, weak. The emergency light above the door flickered once, twice, and died. I bolted for the office. My hand shook as I grabbed the desk phone, punching 911 so fast I nearly missed the last number. The operator's voice steadied me. 911, what's your emergency?" "There's someone inside the Target on Route 17, I said, breathless. "I'm part of the cleaning crew. They're still here. They're—" A click. The line went dead. Every light in the office went out. When the police finally arrived, the automatic doors had been pried open from the inside. They found me crouched near the back office with a broken flashlight and a tear in my sleeve from catching it on a shelf. The intruder was gone. They searched the building, every aisle, every corner. Nothing. But in the stockroom, they found what I'd seen. Footprints and that neat stack of stolen merchandise beside the emergency exit. "It looks like they were here a while," one officer said. "Been planning this for days." I asked how long they thought he'd been inside. The answer still chills me. "Based on the camera feed," he said, "whoever it was entered just after midnight. Stayed hidden the whole time. He wasn't trying to rob the store tonight. He was watching. Watched you vacuum, mop, walk the aisles. For almost 2 hours. After that night, I quit the job. Couldn't walk through a store after dark without my chest tightening. Sometimes I still dream of that beeping scanner, echoing in the dark, calling my name. Trust your instincts, especially when something feels off in a place you think you know. Safety isn't guaranteed just because you've walked the same aisles 100 times. Evil doesn't always burst through the door. It waits quietly, learning your routine until you forget it might be there. Never ignore the smallest warning. Sometimes that's all that stands between you and the dark that watches back.